What I am about to reveal exists in a space between ancient wisdom and modern concealment, a principle so devastatingly effective that those who wield it never speak its name in public. This is not motivational theory or philosophical speculation. This is operational knowledge, the kind that builds dynasties while others build resumes, the kind that transforms financial reality while the masses attend seminars about transformation. The law I will unveil has been preserved through centuries not by secret societies or hidden manuscripts, but by something far more effective, the natural selection of consciousness itself. Truth of this magnitude does not hide. It simply remains invisible to those not vibrating at the frequency required to perceive it. You are about to understand why wealth flows to certain individuals with the inevitability of water finding its level, why some rebuild fortunes from ruins while others squander inheritance, why specific minds seem to operate under different economic laws than the rest of humanity. The answer is not strategy, not information, not even opportunity. It is alignment with a principle that governs the movement of value through reality itself, a law as old as civilization and as current as the transaction happening in this moment, somewhere in the world, where someone who understands this principle is receiving what others desperately chase. The ancient law of wealth operates on a frequency that predates currency, predates commerce, predates even the concept of transaction as we understand it. What the elite know and what the Hermetic traditions have always taught is that wealth is not a thing to be acquired, but a state to be embodied, not a destination to be reached, but a vibration to be maintained. This is not metaphor. This is mechanics. Every ancient tradition that survived long enough to encode real wisdom understood that the visible world, including the flow of money and resources, is governed by invisible correspondences. The Emerald Tablet stated it with perfect clarity: as above, so below, as within, so without. Your external financial reality is not random, not the result of market forces alone, not determined by your work ethic or intelligence. It is the precise material reflection of your internal wealth consciousness, your energetic signature around value, abundance, and deservingness. The Kabbalists understood this as the principle of Chesed, the sphere of expansion and benevolence, the recognition that consciousness precedes manifestation. The Hermetic philosophers knew it as the law of vibration, that nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates, and your financial frequency determines what you attract and repel in the material dimension. Consider what happens in the invisible realm before wealth appears in the visible. There is a state, a quality of being, a vibrational signature that successful individuals carry regardless of their current bank balance. This state existed in them before the wealth materialized, and this state is what caused the materialization, not the other way around. The masses have this backwards. They believe wealth will change their state, will finally allow them to feel abundant, secure, worthy. But the law operates in reverse. The state generates the wealth. Your consciousness is not a passive observer of your financial reality. Your consciousness is the architect, the broadcaster, the magnetic field that organizes particles of opportunity, resource, and exchange into patterns that match your dominant frequency. When someone loses everything and rebuilds rapidly, they have not learned new tactics. They have maintained the internal state that originally created wealth, and that state, being unchanged, reproduces its external equivalent. When someone wins the lottery and returns to poverty within years, they have not lost discipline or made poor choices, though these are symptoms. They have returned to their original wealth frequency, and reality, being a perfect mirror, has adjusted to match. The ancient mystery schools taught that consciousness is the only true causation in the universe. Everything else is effect. Your bank account is effect. Your business results are effect. Your financial opportunities are effect. The cause is always and only your state of consciousness, the sum total of your beliefs, assumptions, self-concept, and energetic signature around wealth. This is why affirmations alone fail, why vision boards collect dust, why reading books about wealth often produces nothing. These approaches attempt to change effect directly, to manipulate the mirror instead of transforming the face. The law does not respond to words or images. The law responds to state, to the vibrational truth of what you fundamentally believe yourself to be, in relation to wealth. Neville Goddard understood this with crystalline clarity when he taught that consciousness is the only reality, and that assumption, though false if persisted in, will harden into fact. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. You do not manifest what you desire. You manifest what you assume to be true about yourself in the invisible realm of consciousness. The mechanism through which this law operates is devastatingly simple, yet profoundly misunderstood. Reality is not solid. Reality is responsive. The quantum field, the space of pure potential that underlies all manifestation, is infinitely malleable and responds not to effort but to frequency. Your dominant frequency is determined not by occasional thoughts, but by your sustained identity, the unconscious story you tell yourself about who you are in relation to money, value, success, and abundance. This story is running constantly beneath your awareness, broadcasting its signal into the field, and the field, being impersonal and perfect in its responsiveness, organizes circumstances to match. When you encounter resistance around wealth, when opportunities close despite your effort, when money flows out as quickly as it flows in, you are not experiencing bad luck or unfair circumstances. You are experiencing the perfect operation of this law, the precise reflection of an internal frequency that does not yet match the external wealth you consciously desire. What separates the wealthy from the struggling is not intelligence, education, connections, or even opportunity, though all these can serve as channels. What separates them is consciousness, the fundamental frequency at which they vibrate in relation to value. The truly wealthy, those who build and sustain fortune across generations or rebuild it after loss, operate from a state I will call wealth consciousness, and this state has specific characteristics that can be identified and cultivated. Wealth consciousness is not happiness about having money. It is a deep cellular knowing that abundance is your natural state, that value flows to you because you are inherently valuable, that wealth is not something you chase but something you allow. This knowing exists independent of current circumstances. It persists through temporary lack. It remains undisturbed by market crashes or business failures because it is not based on external validation. It is an identity, a way of being, a vibrational home frequency that the individual returns to, regardless of what happens in the material world. The ancient law reveals that wealth is always spiritual before it is material, always energetic before it is financial, always internal before it is external. The Hermetists called this the principle of correspondence, the teaching that the outer world corresponds precisely to the inner world, that you cannot have in your experience what you do not first have in your consciousness. This is why two people in identical circumstances produce radically different financial results. The circumstances are neutral. The consciousness is causal. One person vibrates at the frequency of lack, of struggle, of unworthiness, and reality mirrors back more lack, more struggle, more confirmation of unworthiness. Another person in the same circumstances vibrates at the frequency of abundance, of possibility, of inherent value, and reality reorganizes to reflect that frequency. The universe is not moral. It does not judge your frequency. It simply matches it with absolute precision. What I have observed across decades of studying those who generate wealth consistently is a pattern that the masses never recognize because they are looking in the wrong direction. They study tactics, strategies, business models, investment approaches. These are the visible effects. The invisible cause is always state, the internal condition from which all external action emerges. The elite understand intuitively, or have learned through experience, that the quality of your internal state determines the quality of your external results, not because positive thinking attracts good things, but because your state determines what you notice, what you believe possible, what actions you take, what risks you avoid or embrace, how you respond to setbacks, what opportunities you recognize, and most critically, what you subconsciously believe you deserve. Your self-concept around wealth is a prophecy you are fulfilling every day without realizing it. If you fundamentally believe, in the depths of your unconscious programming, that you are not the kind of person who has abundant wealth, you will sabotage every opportunity that threatens to prove that belief wrong. This is not moral weakness. This is psychological law. The ego defends its identity more fiercely than it pursues its desires. The transformation required to align with the ancient law of wealth is not primarily behavioral, it is ontological. You must become a different kind of being, operating from a different frequency, carrying a different energetic signature. This is the work the masses avoid because it is invisible, because it produces no immediate external result, because it requires confronting the deep programming and trauma around money that most people carry unconsciously from childhood, from culture, from every message they absorbed about scarcity, limitation, and their place in the economic hierarchy. The ancient traditions knew that true wealth, the kind that sustains and expands, requires inner alchemy, the transformation of base consciousness into golden awareness. You must dissolve the identity of the one who lacks and assume the identity of the one who has. This is not pretending. This is not affirmation. This is a fundamental shift in who you know yourself to be at the deepest level of consciousness. Consider the entrepreneur who loses a fortune in a market crash or failed venture. Watch what happens next. Some spiral into permanent defeat, never recovering their former position. Others pause, recalibrate, and build something even larger. The difference is never resources or connections, though these may vary. The difference is identity. The one who spirals has lost not just wealth, but their sense of self as a wealthy person. Their identity was tied to the external result, and when the result disappeared, they collapsed into a smaller self, a self defined by loss and failure. The one who rebuilds maintained their internal frequency. They experienced loss as a circumstance, not as an identity. Their self-concept as someone who creates wealth remained intact, and because that frequency remained unchanged, it began broadcasting again, attracting the resources, opportunities, and insights necessary to rebuild. The universe does not care about your history. The universe responds to your frequency in this moment. Change your frequency and your future changes instantly, though the material manifestation may take time to catch up with the shift in consciousness. The masses operate from a consciousness of transaction, of effort exchanged for reward, of value given in hope of value received. This consciousness keeps them perpetually struggling because it is rooted in separation, in the belief that wealth is outside them, that they must convince others to give it to them, that their value must be proven before it is recognized. The elite, whether they learned this consciously or absorbed it through upbringing and environment, operate from a consciousness of embodiment. They do not seek to prove their value. They assume it. They do not hope for abundance. They expect it. They do not work to become worthy of wealth. They act from the unshakable knowing that they already are. This is not arrogance. This is alignment with the law. Arrogance seeks external validation. True wealth consciousness needs none, because it is internally sourced, rooted in an identity that precedes and transcends any particular financial outcome. The practical operation of this law in daily life is both subtle and absolute. Every decision you make, every opportunity you evaluate, every risk you consider, every offer you accept or reject is being filtered through your wealth consciousness, your unconscious beliefs about what is possible for you, what you deserve, what is safe, what is appropriate for someone of your background or education or circumstances. These filters are invisible to you because they operate beneath conscious awareness, but they are visible in your results. Your current financial situation is the perfect readout of your current wealth consciousness. If you want to know what you truly believe about money at the deepest level, look at your bank account. It is not lying. It is reflecting with perfect accuracy the frequency you are broadcasting. This is not judgment. This is information. The moment you accept that your external wealth is a mirror of your internal state, you reclaim your power because you shift from victim of circumstances to creator of consciousness. And consciousness, being the only true cause, is the only thing you need to change. What the ancient law teaches and what modern psychology confirms is that your relationship with money is never actually about money. It is about self-worth, about safety, about power, about freedom, about identity. Money is neutral. It is energy, a medium of exchange, a tool. But in your psyche, money represents everything you believe about your value in the world, your right to exist abundantly, your safety in an uncertain universe. This is why financial transformation without psychological transformation is impossible. You can learn every strategy, master every tactic, work within human intensity, and still remain at the same financial level because the level is not determined by what you do. The level is determined by who you believe yourself to be, and that belief, formed in childhood and reinforced by every subsequent experience, is running your financial life from the shadows of your unconscious mind. The Hermetic principle of mentalism states that all is mind, that the universe is mental. Applied to wealth, this means that your financial reality is not happening to you. It is happening from you. You are not a victim of economic forces, market conditions, or unfair circumstances. You are a creator, broadcasting a specific frequency and receiving back the exact equivalent of what you broadcast. This is the most empowering and most threatening truth you can encounter. Empowering because it means you have total control over your financial future by changing your internal state. Threatening because it means you can no longer blame external conditions for your current results. The moment you truly understand this law, excuses die, victimhood dies, and responsibility, real creative responsibility, is born. You become the author of your financial story instead of a character reacting to a plot written by others. Watch what happens when someone with true wealth consciousness encounters what appears to be lack or limitation. They do not panic. They do not spiral into scarcity thinking. They do not question their value or their worthiness. They recognize the temporary circumstance as exactly that, temporary and circumstantial, having nothing to do with their identity. They maintain their frequency, their inner knowing of abundance, and from that state they take whatever action is required without desperation, without fear, without the energy of lack. This state, this frequency, this energetic signature is what attracts solutions. Not the frantic effort, not the desperate hustle, the calm, centered, abundant state that knows at a cellular level that wealth is natural, that resources always appear, that the universe is fundamentally abundant and responsive. The action that emerges from this state is different in quality from action emerging from fear. It is creative rather than reactive, strategic rather than desperate, and it produces different results because it carries a different vibration. The ancient law of wealth operates through what the Kabbalists called the Tree of Life, the map of consciousness that shows how spiritual energy descends into material form. Wealth begins in Keter, pure consciousness, pure potential. It flows through Chokmah, the sphere of wisdom and creative vision. It moves through Binah, the sphere of understanding and structure. It descends through the moral and aesthetic spheres, through Chesed, which is abundance and benevolence, through Gevurah, which is discipline and discernment, through Tifereth, which is balanced identity, through Netzach and Had, which are victory and surrender, feeling and thought, until finally it reaches Malkuth, the kingdom, the material world where wealth appears as money, assets, resources. But the origin is always consciousness. The material is always effect. Those who try to create wealth by manipulating Malkuth alone, by tactical action without internal transformation, are attempting to violate the law of descent. They are trying to force effect without aligning cause. This produces temporary results at best, exhaustion and frustration more commonly, because they are working against the natural flow of manifestation. What must be understood with absolute clarity is that the universe does not reward hard work. The universe mirrors frequency. There are people working brutally hard who remain poor. There are people working moderately who become wealthy. The difference is never effort. The difference is alignment. Effort emerging from scarcity consciousness produces more scarcity. Effort emerging from abundance consciousness produces more abundance. The action may look identical from the outside. The result will be radically different because the vibration is different, and vibration is what the quantum field responds to. This is why you can do all the right things and get wrong results. The things are not causal. The state is causal. Change the state and the same actions produce different outcomes, or different actions become obvious, or opportunities appear that were invisible from the previous state. The practice of the elite, the hidden discipline that separates those who build lasting wealth from those who struggle, is the practice of state management, of consciousness cultivation, of vibrational alignment. They may not use these words, they may not even understand the mechanism consciously, but they do it. They return to a state of inner abundance regardless of external circumstances. They cultivate the feeling of wealth fulfilled before the wealth appears. They live in the assumption that they are the kind of person to whom wealth flows naturally. This is not delusion. This is understanding the law. Assumption creates reality. State generates circumstances. Consciousness is cause. Everything else is effect. The moment you grasp this at a level deeper than intellectual understanding, the moment it becomes a lived knowing in your body and being, your financial reality begins to shift because you have shifted the cause, and effect must follow by law. The transformation begins not with changing what you do, but with changing what you are. And what you are is not your personality, your history, your current circumstances, or your past failures. What you are is consciousness itself, infinite and creative, assuming a particular form and focus in this moment. Right now, you are assuming an identity in relation to wealth. That identity, that assumption, is creating your financial experience. The ancient law teaches that you can change that assumption at any moment, and when you do, when you truly shift into a new identity, a new frequency, a new state of being, the external world must reorganize to match. This is not magic. This is physics. This is how reality operates. The material world is infinitely flexible, responsive to consciousness, waiting to reflect whatever you fundamentally believe and assume to be true about yourself. You must begin by examining your actual beliefs about money. Not the beliefs you wish you had or think you should have, but the beliefs that are actually running in your unconscious programming. What did you learn about money in childhood? What did your parents believe and demonstrate? What cultural messages did you absorb about wealth, about rich people, about your place in the economic structure? These beliefs, most formed before age 7, are creating your current financial reality. They operate as a filter, screening out opportunities that contradict them, screening in circumstances that confirm them. If you unconsciously believe that money is scarce, that rich people are greedy, that you have to sacrifice your soul to be wealthy, that money corrupts, that you are not smart enough or educated enough or connected enough to build real wealth, these beliefs are broadcasting constantly, and the universe is responding with perfect precision, giving you exactly the experience that matches the broadcast. The work is to identify these limiting beliefs, to see them clearly without judgment, and then to consciously choose different beliefs, different assumptions, a different identity. This is not affirmation. Affirmations are surface-level, conscious mind activity. The transformation required here is deeper. You must reprogram the subconscious, the level where beliefs actually live and operate. The ancient traditions knew this. The mystery schools used ritual, initiation, symbol, and ceremony to bypass the conscious mind and implant new truths directly into the unconscious. Modern psychology calls this reconsolidation, the process by which old neural patterns are dissolved and new patterns are formed. Neville Goddard called it assumption, the practice of living in the feeling of the wish fulfilled until that feeling becomes your natural state, your dominant frequency, your energetic home. The practice is simple in concept, demanding in execution. You must cultivate the state of wealth consciousness before wealth appears. You must feel abundant when your bank account says otherwise. You must think, speak, and act from the identity of someone who is already wealthy, not someone trying to become wealthy. This is the nuance the masses miss. Trying carries the vibration of lack. You only try to become what you are not. Being carries the vibration of fulfillment. You simply are what you are. The person who is wealthy does not affirm wealth. They assume it. They do not hope for abundance. They expect it. They do not work to prove their value. They move from unquestioned knowing of their value. This is the state you must cultivate, practice, and eventually embody, until it is no longer a practice but your natural frequency, your default state, your vibrational truth. Every moment offers you a choice. Will you react from your old identity, the one formed by past lack and limitation? Or will you respond from your new identity, the one aligned with abundance and wealth? The old identity sees obstacles and thinks limitation. The new identity sees obstacles and thinks opportunity. The old identity experiences rejection and confirms unworthiness. The new identity experiences rejection and remains unmoved in its sense of value. The old identity looks at the bank account and feels fear. The new identity looks at the bank account and sees temporary circumstance having no bearing on permanent identity. This is the discipline. This is the practice. This is what the elite do unconsciously or consciously until wealth becomes inevitable, because they have become the frequency that wealth matches. Resistance will arise. Your ego, your old identity, your unconscious programming will fight this transformation, because the ego survives by maintaining consistency, by proving that its view of reality is correct. When you begin to assume a new identity around wealth, your ego will generate thoughts of doubt, will point to current circumstances as evidence of impossibility, will remind you of past failures, will whisper that you are delusional, that this does not work, that you are not special enough or deserving. Enough. This is not truth. This is defense. The ego is defending its existence, and its existence depends on you remaining small, remaining consistent with your past, remaining the person who lacks. You must see this resistance for what it is, witness it without identifying with it, and choose the new state anyway, again and again, until the new state becomes stronger than the old, until the new frequency becomes your dominant broadcast. The universe will test your commitment to this new identity. Circumstances may initially appear to contradict your new assumption. The bank account may not immediately change. Opportunities may not instantly appear. This is where most people abandon the practice and return to their old frequency. They take the external circumstance as evidence that the law does not work, that they were foolish to try, that nothing ever changes. But this is misunderstanding the mechanism. The external is always lagging behind the internal. When you change your frequency, there is a gap, a period where the old circumstances, which were created by your old frequency, are still in place, while the new circumstances, which are being created by your new frequency, are forming but not yet visible. This is the gap where faith is required, not religious faith, but faith in the law itself, the understanding that consciousness is cause and material is effect, and effect must follow cause with the same certainty that harvest follows planting. You must maintain your new frequency through this gap. You must persist in your new assumption despite contradictory evidence. You must live in the feeling of wealth fulfilled even when the bank account is empty. This is not denying reality. This is understanding which reality is causal. The external reality is effect. The internal reality is cause. By maintaining the internal state of wealth consciousness, you are working at the level of cause, and the effects must change. They have no choice. This is law. But you must give the law time to operate. You must maintain your frequency long enough for the material world to reorganize. Most people change their state for a day, a week, maybe a month, then give up when nothing changes externally. They were planting seeds and digging them up before harvest, then declaring that planting does not work. The ancient law of wealth requires patience married to certainty. Patience because manifestation takes time. Certainty because doubt interrupts the frequency. You must be certain of the law even when circumstances suggest otherwise. You must be certain of your new identity, even when the mirror has not yet updated. You must be certain that consciousness is cause, even when the effects are still reflecting the old consciousness. This certainty is not blind optimism. This is understanding mechanism. When you plant a seed, you do not dig it up every day to see if it is growing. You trust the process. You maintain the conditions. You water. You wait. You know that if you do not interfere, the seed will become the plant. The same with consciousness and manifestation. Assume the new state. Maintain the new frequency. Do not interfere with doubt. Do not check constantly for evidence. Live in the assumption that it is already done in consciousness, and consciousness being the only reality, will harden into fact. What I have witnessed in those who successfully apply this law is a quality of detachment married to commitment. They are committed to their new identity, to their wealth consciousness, to their abundant frequency, but they are detached from how and when the wealth appears. They do not micromanage the universe. They do not insist on specific pathways. They hold the state and allow the manifestation to take whatever form serves them best. This detachment is critical because attachment to specific outcomes creates resistance, creates the energy of need, and need repels what you want because need carries the vibration of lack. You only need what you do not have. The wealthy consciousness does not need wealth. It assumes wealth, it knows wealth. It is wealth in consciousness, and the material equivalent must follow. The practice is to enter the silence daily, to withdraw from external stimulation, and to saturate your consciousness with the feeling of wealth fulfilled. Not the thought of it, the feeling. Neville taught that feeling is the secret, that consciousness responds not to words or images, but to feeling, to the emotional state that you sustain. Sit in stillness. Imagine your life as it would be if you were already abundantly wealthy. Not the things you would buy, though you can include those, but more importantly, who you would be, how you would feel, how you would move through the world, what quiet confidence you would carry, what generosity would flow from you, what freedom you would experience. Feel this as already accomplished. Let this feeling saturate your entire being. Do this daily until this feeling becomes more real than your current circumstances, until this feeling becomes your home frequency, the state you return to automatically. From this state, action becomes inspired rather than desperate. You will know what to do because action that aligns with your new frequency will feel natural, obvious, exciting. Action that emerges from your old frequency will feel forced, exhausting, driven by fear. Trust the difference. Follow the inspired action. Ignore the fearful hustle. The universe is guiding you through your feelings, through your intuition, through the quality of energy you feel when contemplating different paths. Wealth consciousness attracts wealth-building actions naturally. You do not have to force it. You simply have to maintain the state and follow what emerges from that state. The how is not your problem. The how is the universe's response to your what, and your what is your state, your frequency, your consciousness. You will know you are aligned with the ancient law of wealth when several shifts occur simultaneously. Money will begin to flow more easily, not necessarily in massive amounts initially, but with less resistance, less effort, more synchronicity. Opportunities will appear that you could not have predicted or planned. People will show up offering exactly what you need at exactly the right moment. Ideas will come that feel like downloads rather than intellectual constructions. You will feel different internally, calmer about money, less attached to specific outcomes, more trusting of the process, more certain of your value, regardless of current circumstances. These are signs that your frequency has shifted, that your consciousness has transformed, that you have become aligned with the law and the law is beginning to reorganize your external reality to match your internal state. The transformation from lack consciousness to wealth consciousness is not a single event. It is a journey of gradually dissolving old programming and installing new identity. There will be moments of backsliding, moments where fear resurfaces, where doubt creeps in, where old patterns reassert themselves. This is normal. This is part of the process. Do not judge yourself when this happens. Simply recognize it, witness it, and choose the new state again. Every time you choose the new state over the old, you strengthen the new neural pathway, you solidify the new identity, you make the new frequency more dominant. Over time, the new state becomes automatic, effortless, your natural way of being, and at that point wealth is inevitable because you have become the consciousness that wealth reflects. The ancient law of wealth that the elite understand and the masses ignore is this: consciousness is the only reality. Assumption hardens into fact, state generates circumstances, identity creates destiny, and wealth is not something you get but something you become. You do not chase money. You become the frequency that money chases. You do not seek abundance. You embody the consciousness from which abundance flows. You do not work to prove your value. You assume your infinite value and allow the universe to reflect that assumption back to you in material form. This is the law. This is how it has always worked. This is how it will always work. The question is never whether the law works. The question is whether you will align with it, whether you will do the invisible work of transforming your consciousness while others remain obsessed with visible tactics, whether you will become the person who has wealth in consciousness before you, have it in the bank. The choice before you now is absolute. You can continue operating from your current wealth consciousness, your current frequency, your current identity, and you will continue generating your current results. Or, you can make the decision, the real decision that happens not in your mind but in your being, to transform your consciousness, to assume a new identity, to embody wealth before it appears, to live in the state of abundance regardless of circumstances, to persist in this new frequency until the material world has no choice but to reorganize itself to match. This is not positive thinking. This is not wishful fantasy. This is operational law. This is the mechanism by which all wealth is created and sustained. Those who understand this law build empires. Those who ignore it struggle endlessly, wondering why their effort produces so little while others seem blessed by fortune. Fortune is not random. Fortune is frequency. Wealth is not luck. Wealth is law, the ancient law that governs the flow of all value through reality itself, waiting for you to align with it, to embody it, to become it, so that what you are in consciousness must manifest as what you have in the world.